Hey guys, Honey Defecator here, and I wanted to make a video today about what the good spells are to trigger in PoE, in particular because in 3.26 GG massively busts Spellslinger, so you're going to see a lot of people playing it in the campaign, and then hopefully later on. I play a ton of trigger builds, so I think about this kind of thing a lot. I'm going to exclude some things on here, and generally that just means I think they're too low damage to actually discuss, but that doesn't mean I hate the skill that you like or something. Anyways, I'm going to go from highest potential ceiling to lowest, and just to get it out of the way, I think the most powerful just off the bat are Blade Blast, Volatile, Detonate, Seething, Vortex, Projection, Detonate, Dead of Chain, and then I winner, but Jesus Christ, the positioning on that one. And then you still have really powerful things like soulrend, Spiral, Reap, with Awaken Cascade, and then Rolling Magmas, particular with returning directions. If you want to see a particular spell discussed, that will be bookmarked under the video, so you can skip around, obviously. Yeah, if you guys like this kind of content, please like and subscribe, definitely helps the channel. But without further ado, I'm just going to get into it. So Blade Blast is one of the highest potential damage effectiveness skills in the game. You can hit up to 40 times with it, making it 2,800, which is about 2 DDs of chain in the previous patch, because it's like 2,800 is just absurd. But to get that is very complicated. So for example, Ethereal Knives of Lingering Blades fires 10 blades, and then with returning projectile and not getting too much prod speed, they will land directly at your feet. If you don't get pierced, it'll be 9 because 1 will just stay over there. But as you can see, this is 4 attacks, and that left my first one's expired because they actually do have a duration of 6 seconds. But if I go like this, you'll see this is 40 hits because it'll put exactly 40 at their feet. Now, you have other options to do this, like you can use, and I was going to say first, it's pretty simple. You just need to stand relatively near what you're attacking. The positioning on it's pretty simple. You just kind of need to be near where the blades are going to fall, which generally is going to be your feet if you scale it this kind of way, which makes it the most consistent. You do have potential issues, not generally in bossing, but if there's like hills, like for example on the way to this fight, they will get stuck in that, and then your single target will be a little scuffed. So like sometimes you'll run into rares where they're like near a tree or something like that, where your damage is going to fall off a bit. But you can also use something like Bladefall. And the thing about Bladefall is it definitely is a better way to clear because it spreads the Blade Blast out more. But for single target, as you can see, this is Bladefall with a Spell Cascade. It is significantly less hits. Now, I could take out the like Conk Effect and Spell Cascade. I guess maybe leave the Conk Effect in. So you can see it's like a pretty consistent 5 hits. Spell Cascade makes it a little bit more, but it spreads it out farther, which causes the problem. You generally don't want to level this because you want the AoE to be destroyed on this skill. That's the nice thing about using Ethereal Knives Lingering Blades is you can get as much increased AoE you want for your Blade Blast as you want because it does not affect EK. It's going to spread the exact same regardless how much AoE you have. Just avoid getting too much projectile speed. Now, how would you actually trigger 40 blades? That's the complicated part and why this one is like just kind of one of the most difficult nuts to actually crack for like playing. If you use something like normal casting crit like Lancing Steel and then you did like EK and then Blade Blast, it doesn't really work. So it's like you'd want returning proj and that whole thing. So it's like that's kind of a problem. So you kind of generally need to lean into something that gives you more casting crit setups or other triggers. So for example, like I did Quad Cock Blast Rain last league because you can have a cast on crit, Ethereal Knives, Lingering Blades, return, and Blade Fall on that. That'll create a ton of blades, and then Blade Blast plus another EK of return, like your main set or something like that. So you can just try to create a ton of blades. Other options are something like if you did Spellslinger Blade Blast, you could do Power Siphon, Cast on Crit, Return plus EK of Lingering Blades in like a 4-link. So when you Power Siphon, it will create 10 at back of your feet, and then it'll return again, and it'll create another 10, so that's 20. And then you Spellsling 1, Ethereal Knives plus Return, that's 30. And then you Spellsling Blade Blast, that's 30 hits total. It's not quite 40, but it is, again, it's very, very difficult to actually hit that number. So it's generally going to be a lot lower than that 2,800. With 2,100 effectiveness, I think being like the reasonable amount. So I'm talking about Volatile, Dead of Seething. In general, this skill is kind of, I think in a lot of ways, a good replacement for Detonate, Dead of Chain. It's just slightly more damage. They're pretty similar, all truth be told. But the thing with this skill is what makes it kind of complicated, because it has up to 1,700 effectiveness, which is like 100 higher than old DD of Chain before the nerf. You need to get 10 corpses down to do this. So if you just have 1 or 5 corpses down, like right here, you're going to. I'll see that actually was only 5 hits. I don't have a ton of AoE. I would say ignore the balls because the way you play this on this character. Essentially, if you're triggering the skill, you can ignore the orb part because those are going to get replaced too quickly for them to ever actually deal damage. If you use Desecrate and then you blow up 5 corpses, you get 5 hits. So that's 170 effectiveness times 5, which ends up being like, what, is that 850? Which makes that slightly more damage than Ice Nova Frost Bolts from the previous patch, because now Ice Nova Frost Bolts in 3.26 deals half that damage. So clearly a very strong skill. Now, it's a little less consistent than something like DD of Chain. And if you use Desecrate plus Spell Cascade, or you have more Desecrates going off than your Volatile Seething, you can get between 5 and 10 hits. which at 6 hits, it's equivalent to current DD of Chain now after the nerf, like getting every single hit that it can get, which it generally does not as well. So at 6 hits, it also has 1 less crit, and the AoE is worse, so it makes it like a worse clear skill. But all of that aside, the variance on this is a lot higher than something like DD of Chain. So you see that's 4 hits. This is which normal Desecrate. That one's 5 hits. Now if I do Spell Cascade, it's going to make it more inconsistent. Well, of course, now it's 9 hits. It's usually between 7 and 8 from my experience with Spell Cascade. So that one was 6. That one's 8. As you can see, you're not consistently going to get 10, but with 7 and 8 hits, it is an insanely strong skill still. That's like 1260 effectiveness, which is, I think, the only other skill that just like without any weirdness is Vortex of Projection at 1500. So it is a shit ton of damage. Now, move on. I'll show DD of Chain just because it's just so similar, so I don't have to change that much. You will get a consistent more hits with this skill. Normally, you will get, with just Desecrate, you will consistently get 5 hits from the spell and then 5 hits from the explosion, which makes it, currently it's 100 effectiveness, but after the patch goes live, it's gonna be 650. So it's gonna be 650 effectiveness, which is quite a bit lower than 4 hits or 5 hits with DD of Seething. So here's DD of Chain. That one was 12. Sounds 13. Generally, you are not going to get all 16 of the hits. That is, but it's like somewhere between that where you're going to get like 12 to 13. So still very powerful skill, but and it has better AoE than volatile to seething. But volatile to seething is significantly more damage. Not significantly more, but quite a bit more. But also it's a little more high variance. So this next one, Vortex of Projection, is probably consistently more damage than the previous two, Volatile Dead and Detonate Chain Reaction, on average if you set up all the hoops you need to jump through. So I've kind of overlooked this skill a little bit, and I assume the community kind of has as well because of Ice Nova Frostbolt's existence. So that one used to be around 780 effectiveness when you expanded off of all 4 Frostbolts. But now you can only expand off 2 Frostbolts, making it just under 400. And Vortex of Projection is going up to 200% effectiveness, but it's 50% more on expand, so 300 per hit. So if you hit with 2, that's 600, and that's 50% more than Ice Nova Frostbolts when triggering it. The thing is, you can get way more hits than that. It goes up to 5, which would make it 1500, which is just 100 under than old DD of Chain, making it incredibly powerful if you can actually set it up properly. Now, skill is a little weird. It has a set fire, like explosion rate. So when you fire a Frostbolt, as you can see, it expands at that set interval, no matter how fast the Frostbolts move, no matter how fast your cast time, it just doesn't matter. It's always going to pop, 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 pop. So if you want to get all of that damage, what I learned is that if you really, really slow down the speed of your Frostbolt, you're going to get really familiar with this cluster because it creates a lot of really high damage setups. But adjacent animosity plus slower proj on your Frostbolt makes it possible to hit with all 5. Because as you can see, if the boss is this waypoint, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see it pops all over this. Sounds strange. But I can show this on a boss. It's a little bit harder to show directly on a boss without triggering them because there is a base cast time for this, which is going to slow the hit rate. So I'm probably going to be able to get 4 hits. Especially if I'm like directly inside of him like this, it's going to be even less. But I'll try to do it as fast as I possibly can, my clicks. So it's going to be consistently 4. Now I can use Decoy Totem to kind of just show, if I don't animation cancel it, this easier. So if I do this, it's going to be able to get all of them on top of them because I don't have to actually respond and click this as quickly. But when you're triggering it, it's going to be even easier on top of them. Generally, with just adjacent animosity plus slower proj on this, and a reasonable amount of AoE, even like 50-ish, you are going to be able to get very consistent 4 hits on directly on top of something. Some bosses will just like stand directly on top of you, making it impossible to get that 5th hit without an absurd amount of AoE. But if you can position yourself just slightly away, you're going to consistently get 5 and have just an absurd damage skill if you can meet this condition. Like pretty easy to do with quad cock blast rain setups or spellslinger setups. One thing I will note about triggering the skill is this is true of Ice Nova Frostbolts even before this patch. If you trigger them at the exact same time, like for example with spellslinger, the first hit of this is only going to be 1 because the Frostbolts are not going to exist at the exact same time because they're going to pop off at the same time. So that first one, that like literal first hit in a sequence when you start attacking is going to deal less damage than everything else. That doesn't really matter much when bossing because over time it doesn't matter. But when you're clearing, you are going to be like attacking like twice. It's kind of what happens when the corpses don't exist yet for something like the corpse skills like volatile dead or detonate dead, where the first hit is kind of layers it and then or like sets it up for you to do subsequent hits, and then after that it's fine. But so you kind of need to attack twice to trigger it. Matters obviously less on something like cast on like quad cock or whatever, because it's just going to create so many. But spellslinger, it's just something to keep in mind. Now, speaking of not being directly on top of the boss, this next skill, Eye Winner, is an incredibly high damage skill, but it is one of the worst for getting your positioning correct. The way you want Eye Winner to work is you want the eye to directly land on the boss when it's done with its flight. You don't need multiple instances of slower proj quite like the last setup I was showing. You pretty much need either adjacent animosity or slower proj. So it kind of just depends on what your setup can afford. Can you have just this as a link and you can give that up? That's fine. Then you don't have to actually path down this part of the tree, which is going to be good for a lot of builds. Like if you're top side tree over here, not having to path down here is really nice to know. You do need slower proj to make that happen to get your consistent hits. Now, if I show you Eye Winner directly on top of the boss, this is not going to deal very much damage. You're thinking 7 hits is a lot, but on a skill that hits as many times as it potentially does, it's actually not that much, because the skill only has 50 effectiveness. So 7 hits is honestly pretty decent compared to other spells. But but anyways, let me show you with Decoy Totem what I'm talking about lining it up. It's actually kind of annoying to get it set up properly, but you'll get a feel for it. See, it goes up to 19 hits without any additional projectiles at the perfect ideal distance. But the problem is, if the boss is moving or you're moving, you're not going to get that consistent amount. And I consider the skill incredibly DPS ambiguous, because I really never know if it's proccing that 200% more damage by the time they dissipate. It should be by right before it ends flight, it should get that, but that's almost impossible for me to actually test. But if you can be a little bit away from a boss, it's really easy to get this amount of hits. It's just you either need something like Decoy Totem or a boss that is stationary a bunch and doesn't actually move. Really powerful skill. It's just, I cannot stress enough, the positioning on it is painful. And the less proj speed you have, the more true that is. Like if you just have slower proj and not this, you will get even less hits if you're directly on top of a boss, because it'll be farther away from them. So that's why you want to destroy the proj speed though. So it's when the eye ends, it just all the projectiles in a ring hit them. So this next skill, soulrend spiral, is very weird mechanically. I have a video on the mechanics of this already if you want to check that out. But the simple explanation is soulrend spiral fully rotates. It does 5 hits by default. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if you get an additional projectile, you can get another hit, because every time it does a full rotation, you can get a hit. So that means at 5 hits, you get 1, 6, you get 2, and then at 11, you get 3. But if you stand directly inside of the boss, you will not get those hits. I do not fully understand why that mechanic is the way it is, but if I'm right here, you can see it's 2 hits, but if I move literally inside his hitbox, it is just 1. But where it does get more broken is with the Source of Return, because with the Source of Return, it's not going to show the maximum hits, because it's going to be everything. The poisons just don't last long enough based on my projectile speed that I've destroyed for this, which you don't want to do with the skill. The skill's already got slow proj speed, so if anything, you want to get increased proj speed. But you'll get 1 hit on the way back, and then every single projectile that returns will hit if you stand inside the boss. If you stand very slightly off inside of the boss, you will not consistently get all those hits. You'll get some, as you can see, but you will not get the maximum potential of the skill. Unfortunately, returning projectiles did get a pretty big damage penalty in the next 3.26 patch, but there are some places to get that without a damage penalty, very late game, like Nimmies, or really early, like Saboteur, which is really weird to consider playing a poison skull now. But anyways, skill is very broken, but you need to be very serious about actually staying inside the boss if you want to get your maximum damage potential. Other downsides with the skill is there is no other skill in the game that has this massive of a downside, but Soulrend Spiral's mana cost is catastrophic. This is a level 1 gem, it's 34. I think it goes up to 60 something at level 20. You will need, and I mean literally need, something like Eldritch Battery and thousands of ES plus Instant Leech, which that also got nerfed a little bit. Instant Leech got nerfed a little bit. You might need even Ghost Reaver. But using the skill, you have a lot of hoops to jump through. It is very powerful, but the positioning's kind of annoying, and you really need to solve mana. So while it's powerful, it has more drawbacks than a lot of one-button high damage skills. So what's interesting about this skill Reap is that it's just kind of good enough already. It is a 420 effectiveness skill, because you gain blunt charges you hit an enemy, which essentially gives it double damage, max quality. And around 400% is when its skill is just good enough to just consider triggering in my eyes. So this one just kind of is, without doing anything weird. Where it gets really broken is when you get Awakened Spell Cascade, because this skill can hit 3 to 4 times. I do not know what the range is on getting 4 hits anymore, because way Spell Cascade doesn't work the way it used to. It got changed with the impending Doom nerf. So I don't know if it's still possible to get 4 hits. It probably is with sufficient AoE or sufficiently destroying your AoE. But generally, if you just stand inside the boss, you'll be able to get 3 hits pretty easily without too much trouble. If you move around, you just kind of need to eyeball it if you're at a distance. See, like that was 2. There is a dead zone where you can only get 1. Trying to reproduce it's kind of difficult. But in general, this is just going to be like a, this with 3 hits, it's like 120 effectiveness or 1200 effectiveness, but then minus like some amount from Awakened Spell Cascades less damage. It's like 900, which is pretty great. And if you can actually get it to 4, it's like insanely high. And then when you have Awakened Spell Cascade, the clear is actually pretty good. As you can see, it just like really kind of covers the screen really. So this next skill, I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with. It's Rolling Magma. This is the premier spell leveling skill for Reason. It's pretty easy to get consistent 2 hits with this with even decent positioning. And it's a skill you can use Ellie Proliff with early on, which is really nice for clearing because of the ignite spread. But point being, if you get 2 hits with this skill, it's a 560 effectiveness skill, which is far higher than most skills in the game, probably like 95% of them, honestly. Now, getting 2 hits is pretty easy without doing anything, like with any AoE or any prod speed. As you can see, it's just, if I put the skill gem in here, and I remember to click it, even at point blank range, I'm getting 2 hits pretty easily because I have a decent amount of AoE for my amulet, like 50% total. So I'm getting a pretty consistent double hit. Now, where a skill gets really messed up is when you actually destroy the projectile speed. So I have adjacent animosity plus slower proj here, and I was using faster proj to counteract that, get it to about 0. But so if I do this, and then I stand back here, I'm going to get a pretty consistent 4 hits. And the reason for that is because when you reduce the projectile speed, it lowers how far the chains happen apart. As you can see, they like happen like really close together when you destroy the prod speed like that. And the reason you want to be back from a distance is, I guess I should just show this. If you aim it really close to yourself, the chains happen a little bit further apart, where if you aim it at the maximum distance, they happen really close together. So that's why you like want to be a little bit of a distance. Now, where the skill gets really silly is with something like random directions. So if I do random directions, I'm going to get a pretty consistent 3 hits, even at point blank range. Generally not something that's going to be like generally like around like 4-ish hits, just it's complete RNG. I want to get into the middle because the walls make it actually easier, I think, in general, to get more hits. But so as you can see, it's 3, 4. That one's actually 5, which again, it's complete random how many times it actually hits. So this one is completely left. So that was just 3 hits. Do one more. 3, 4, 5. Yeah. We're getting pretty lucky on those, honestly. Usually seems to be about like 4 hits based on my experience, like a point blank range. But you can get, your chain count will increase and it'll make that easier. But and the wiki already said this, so I don't want to say it's something like I discovered, because it's like, I've tested this without enemies and it doesn't seem like it does much. But with volley, what happens is it doesn't shotgun with additional projectiles, just keep that in mind. But what can happen is one of your rolling magmas can go off to this way. One can go off this way, one can stay here, or one can hit 3 times and go off, and then one can come back and hit again. You'll never get more hits than the chain account will allow it to, so like as if you only had 1 projectile, but it will increase the chance of you getting your maximum number of hits. So with volley, I will consistently be getting like 5 to 6 hits. See, 6 hits there. I should have waited for those stacks to fall off. I really need to have my can't take poison damage on. But as you can see, it will very consistently get near your maximum number of chain hits. It's definitely not going to be, because like with Nimmies, this is 8 potential hits. But as you see, it was 6 both times I used it. It's generally going to be around that range. You will increase that amount with something like GMP or greater volley. And the reason I use volley over LMP is because the projectile penalty on this at level 20 is only 3%, and the random direction means it doesn't matter which one you use, so you just use the one that's slower. But with GMP or greater volley, and you use greater volley, obviously, you would get that number even higher. But the thing is, you almost get your maximum with just volley, with just 2 proj already, so I don't think it's necessarily worth it, although it might help your clear. Now, where you would want to use something like greater volley, would be like if you didn't want to destroy the projectile speed, because that will drastically increase your overlap potential, just because you'll need even more to account for not destroying the proj speed. Like if you wanted to like maximize the clear of it, right, then you would do something like that. But so we're gonna start getting into like the more fair skills that shotgun. So this is a weird one that I assume not everybody knows, is Fireball's mechanics are that it creates that AoE explosion effect that only happens when the projectile's flight ends, as in there's no more pierce, no more fork, no more chain, no more return. Like it's just like it's done. It's collided and then it explodes. It only does it at the end. So if you have no additional projectile behaviors when you use Fireball, you can get multiple hits if there is something to collide with. So like normally Fireball, I'm going to showcase this as Spellslinger. It's the easiest way I know to show it. So I'm getting one hit. I have 3 projectiles, just one hit, right? That's because only one projectile can collide with a mob. However, if it collides with a tornado directly on top of a mob, you'll get 2 hits. Because as you can see, one's going to hit the boss, one's going to hit the tornado. It's going to explode when it hits the tornado. It's going to explode when it hits the boss. So much like Lightning Arrow, you can achieve the same interaction with Tornado and tons of other skills. This one only happens, though, when Fireball ends, so you cannot have additional projectile behavior. So I don't know what scenario that is, would create for you, but if you either use LMP with Fireball or you're like a Deadeye and you didn't have Pierce, Fork, Chain, or any of that other weird stuff, you'll get multi-hits. Now, this skill is intended to work this way, like as opposed to a lot of these interactions. It's just like a pretty fair one. This is just how the skill works. Ice Spear, any additional projectile after the first is going to hit the mob. It creates 2 projectiles normally, but if I have something like GMP, it's going to fire 6 projectiles, and they're all going to hit because it's like a barrage, barrage support, the skill barrage, Lancing Steel. It all just fires in a line, so it's intended to hit. It's like if I stand pretty much no matter where, I'm going to get all of my hits. He stunned me, so I didn't get that one. But if I stand back here, it's going to get 6. If I stand back here, it's going to get 6. Where the only thing is, it does spread a little bit at a distance, so like you'll miss like a few on occasion. With Far Shot, you don't actually run into this. I always forget that because I couldn't remember if GG removed it. But essentially, if you don't stand far enough back, it doesn't transform into the second phase. And if it doesn't transform into the second phase, you are not getting the skill's baked in absurd crit chance and crit multi. This skill has a natural 49% chance to crit and a ton of crit multi. You get even more with quality, so it's like a little over 100. It ends up being a little over 100 multi, right? Or no, it's like 90 or something. But point being, this skill is really good if you don't have access to like a ton of crit multi on your tree, and you can't get something like Elemental Overload, because it just gives you a ton of free crit damage, making this deceptively high damage skill. And if you're point blank range, you do get all your hits, but you do not get that crit bonus, because it only gets that in its second form. Now, a skill that works pretty much, well, I was gonna say this one works more similar to the Caustic Arrow, where it creates explosions on the ground. It's a ground targeted projectile. So if I have 6 projectiles here, or I have 5, sorry, right? Because it only has 1 naturally. But as you see, this is just 5 hits, right? Because I'm just creating these explosions, much like Caustic Arrow. But the skill, if you get one little tiny pierce, you end up getting 6, because one of them actually collides and then explodes behind the mob. This skill is very easy to shotgun with. The AoE is relatively big. I don't have quality on it, which gives base radius, but even at a distance, it's pretty hard to not get all of them. If you get really far back, you'll start missing, see like that. But if you're like relatively close to point blank range, you're gonna get all your hits. And a skill that also works as it's intended, Blazing Salvo. This one you do not generally want to get extra sources of projectile. Like extra sources of projectile do add to damage, but things like GMP end up being a damage loss because it already starts with so many. I believe it gets another one at level 21, much like Rolling Mag gets another chain at 21. So you want plus gem level somewhere if you don't have the corruption. The quality is nice because it helps with the overlap. But so I have 7 projectiles here. And as you can see, 7 hits. Pretty straightforward. Now, this skill has a really weird interaction with Sniper's Mark. Sniper's Mark will cause a projectile to split off, but it immediately falls to the ground. So I have 2 splits here from Sniper's Mark, so I will get 9 hits if I do this. And if you scale the mark effect to like past 50%, you'll get another 1 hit, but that's not really, I mean, scaling mark effect is good already, but if you just incidentally do that, you'll just get another hit. But with how many hits this skill actually gets, it's not really that big of a deal because it's just adding 2 hits to make a skill that's 420 effectiveness blaze, which is again pretty decent. Just makes it slightly higher, like 500. If you stand from a distance, you are not going to get all your hits at all, especially if you don't have a ton of AoE. So it is another skill where you do want to be like pretty close to get your maximum DPS uptime. This last one, requiring like a mechanical explanation that is also pretty decent damage, is Ball Lightning of Orbiting. So you guys are probably already pretty familiar with this one, but if not, it is a skill. All the Ball Lightning effects, including Ball Lightning of Static, normal Ball Lightning in this one, can hit up to 13 times. Ball Lightning of Orbiting is nice in that you generally only need like 30 to 50. I want to say it's like around like 50-ish AoE and quality on the gem to get consistent 10 hits if you stand inside the boss's hitbox, which makes this a really good damage skill. It's 500 effectiveness. Definitely higher than just like the other completely fair skills without any like, fuss or whatever. if you want to get the 13 hits, you either need a ton of AoE or you want to destroy the prod speed, like getting the slower prod here, as I can show. Pretty easy to actually get the 13 with the slower projectiles. Can't really, I guess, show it getting consistently 10, but generally around, like if you increase the base radius from this, what does it go up to? Like if you get this like to 2.6, like in PUB, you'll have about 10 hits. And if you really want more, you either have to use the slower proj gem or come down to here. So it just kind of depends on where you're on the tree. Slower proj is generally not going to be worth using a support gem unless there's not something else, because it's only 19% more. It ends up being not that much more damage compared to a lot of other gems, because 10 hits is just quite good enough, like as is. And then the other things I was going to talk about, because it's like these are like the remaining ones that it's like I don't need to mechanically explain. Cracking Lance of Disintegration is getting buffed to 360 effectiveness next patch. That's going to be pretty decent. It comes with 20% maximum effective shock, so if you're something like an Elementalist or something that can take advantage of that, it gets it closer to like that 400 effectiveness range, making it pretty decent. And the skill looks cool as fuck. Firestorm Meteors going up to 410. This skill I've used a lot in the past, but I try to avoid it in the future because if you're playing like a cast and crit build or like something with a lot of triggers, this skill clutters your screen ridiculously. It is good damage, but man, does it make it hard to see anything. Flame Surge, deceptively strong. This is like another 400 effectiveness skill because against burning enemies, this goes up to like 110% more. This ends up being just over 400% more damage. The clear in it, not very good, but decent damage skill. And actually pretty similar to that, where it's like just like a line. Soulrend Reaping, a single projectile, 400 effectiveness. Nothing else to add. That's the skill. It deals directly chaos damage, which 400% for just that is actually quite high compared to normal chaos skills. But yeah, there's nothing like really crazy about this one. Generally, I see people just using this to clear without extra projectiles, and it kind of blows my mind because the clear, it's a single projectile. But anyways, I digress. There isn't really anything like crazy going on with other mechanical skills. Like there is like, you know, obviously like proj scaling with spark and just stuff like that. But these are all the skills that I would say, if you're trying to trigger, are like the first things you should consider. And then you can obviously go to more fun skills, like, you know, priority 1 should be having fun, obviously. But if you're like worried about early, like not having enough damage, these are the skills that I would consider leaning on. I can do another video similar to this if you guys would find it useful on like what the good triggers are, because I feel like I definitely know those pretty well, or just things like that. Like if you guys want more thorough explanations on mechanics. Generally, people don't seem to like these kind of videos that much, but I think they're important just for as a reference when you're like trying to build a character. So either way, poops in, butts out.